Big rumors out of Stillwater that I'm going to explain to you on this episode of Locked On West Virginia, as Mike Gundy seems to be on the outs. And their athletic director, there's no contract in sight.
You are Locked On West Virginia, your daily podcast on the West Virginia Mountaineers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, guys? Welcome back in. My name is Mountaineer Paul. I'm your host. This is Locked On West Virginia. Well, we're talking about the Mountaineers on the football side of things, but more about Wren Baker, actually, on this episode as we dive into some things I've been told today. We'll get started here in just a second as this episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, when it comes to FanDuel, if you want to bet $5, if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today to get started. Thanks for making Locked On West Virginia your first listen and for being a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we talk about your team every single day. Okay, so having a conversation with a few friends in the media at Oklahoma State today, multiple meetings held today about the status of head coach Mike Gundy, and it seems to not be just a matter of when, or not if, but when Mike Gundy is out at Oklahoma State. Now, I was told, some point this week, so we'll have to continue to monitor that. Certainly, maybe he talks him back into letting him try to work this thing out the rest of the year. But more importantly, if that trigger is pulled, it's going to set into motion a chain of events that I think West Virginia fans need to be aware about. I'll explain all about this. So obviously, if you've been following the pulse of Oklahoma State athletics for the past few weeks, you know that there's been a lot of speculation about Chad Weiberg, the athletic director's contract that expired at the end of June. And after a rough showing on the gridiron this past weekend, the rumor mill is kicked back into overdrive. He is the architect of the Cowboy sports over the last few years, obviously. Well, a source close to the program has told me that his job is obviously not 100% solid, as there is no contract in place. They've pushed it. They've kicked that can down the road, right? So there was a Board of Regents meeting on Saturday or Sunday. I'm sorry. What am I talking about? After the game versus Tulsa, and sounds like there's the brass is circling the wagons here a little bit. So what does that mean? Well, it means that Wren Baker would be obviously an enormous pickup for them. And I'm told that whenever West Virginia put out the statement that it did about the commitment to West Virginia and the fundraising and the whole nine, basically that pissed some folks off in Stillwater, because that's not happening for them. That's, as a matter of fact, that they don't even, this is basically their first year believing in NIL to any extent. And so you see where I'm saying this is an issue for West Virginia. And unfortunately, it couldn't come at a worse time if it were to happen either. I mean, I doubt it would happen during this season, but it's something you have to be looking for on the horizon. If this athletic director's job comes open, then you start to really worry, obviously, because Wren Baker is the number one target, and it's been speculated for a long time that he would go back home. So the fact that Gundy's job is in jeopardy, the athletic director is working without a contract, and both these things could culminate into an opening for both. Why not just, if you're going to lose your legendary coach, why not go ahead and just replace everything, right? Now, and you look at Weiberg, his Mike Boynton didn't work out. Mike Gundy's not working out. So there are things in the works, I would say, behind the scenes, but I can't promise, that one thing or another is going to happen here. They did put out a quote that Chad is committed to our student athletes and our coaches, and our president, Jim Hess, is committed to Chad's energy and to dedication to them. He also dodged a direct timeline on the new deals, adding, "I think the contract will be addressed in due time." That's not a vote of confidence. Like, why are you kicking the contract down the road? I don't get it. So, when's it going to be time to have this? He said, when it's time to have this discussion again, it'll happen. He said, I was told from my source, that's board speak for cool your jets. So let's not forget Weiberg's own words to donors after his open heart surgery last month. By the way, he just had open heart surgery. It was a raw, reflective kind of letter that hit it was a gut punch for a lot of Cowboy fans. He said, "Together, Oklahoma State athletics will continue doing what we always have, competing for championships while creating champions for life." So it doesn't sound like he's ready to back off of this, but you throw that into the mix. You've got an athletic director that is having open heart surgery, that doesn't have a contract. The head coach is in what most would consider a pretty bad spot. And I'm being told by media sources they've had meetings all week or all weekend. I mean, it's not ifs and buts. I'm telling you right now, they're having meetings about it. Like, definitely not ifs and buts. They're talking about this situation right now. So I don't know where Wren Baker fits in and when he fits in. I mean, obviously, I don't think it's right now. The odds of it happening in the middle of the season would be low, I would imagine. Gundy may get fired in the middle of the season. That could happen. But the rest of it, I don't know. I mean, it sounds like they're probably working without Weiberg as it is, since he just had open heart surgery. But I want to talk about a little bit about why Wren Baker is a candidate for them outside of the fact that he's tied to them. Why is he such a big candidate? Well, obviously, you can go over the hiring history. I think one of the big things that I was told from my source was one of the things that they think that benefits him greatly in this scenario is that he's no stranger to stepping into the shadow of legends, as he had to slide into the AD role in 2022 and immediately had to replace Bob Huggins. So obviously that is right there with a Mike Gundy, right? Similar. So even though it was a different kind of controversy, Wren Baker didn't flinch. He made a hire that was a pretty good hire, a rising star in DeVries that injected some fresh energy into the program. And that's the kind of steady hand you're going to want when the spotlight is hottest. You need somebody like that, right? And I mean, look, it's not the first time they've had to replace somebody. They've had to replace Les Miles before. So, there's also the money part of this, but, in the NIL era, you've got to be careful. But Baker is an elite closer when it comes to finances and raising money. That's just a fact. Exactly. Cruz, he got his start under Eddie Sutton. So, I'm told by multiple people today two people today that Wren Baker is on the list. So, not on the list, number one on the list. So I would definitely say just watch out. Now, are there reasons to stay at West Virginia for Wren Baker? Absolutely there are. He's got young girls that are kind of entrenched in the fabric of the community and where they're at in Morgantown right now. Absolutely. But there's also, when you look at it, other reasons. I mean, West Virginia is not exactly a terrible spot, right? So, I don't know. I mean, it's looking up an article right now that I just happened to see earlier. Let's see. We can go share screen. So the current director of athletics for athletics, he was named to the position in summer of 2021. Is a former student athlete at Oklahoma State himself. So it's not like he's not, also a pretty well-loved person in Oklahoma State. He oversees the athletic department, obviously. Looking at some more of his. So it doesn't look. I don't know what his age is. That was the thing I was going to look at. Looks like. I mean, he looks to probably be in his 50s. I would say maybe late 40s, 50s. He's got gray hair, but sometimes that can be deceiving. So it doesn't look like he's old, like he's not Oliver Luck's age or something like that. Looks like he's been around forever. I mean, since the early 90s anyway. So, this is one of those ones where, this would be a gut punch for West Virginia. It would be incredibly difficult, if near impossible, to replace Wren Baker and what he's meant to West Virginia. He's been a stabilizing force even behind the scenes when we've had all these issues going on with either Bob Huggins. I mean, name an athletic director in the country, and you won't find it that's dealt more with Wren Baker and come out on the other side like he has. Everything. I mean, we can name it if you want to, but I mean, Bob Huggins, Neil Brown, Darren DeVries, Don Plitzelwhite. Like, you can go on and on and on, and the replacements he's had to make, Randy Mazey, like, it's insane. And that's not even in counting the Josh Eilert scenario and what led into that, and that entire basketball season and all the horrible things that happened just during that span of time from Bob Huggins till the end of the season when we had to replace Eilert. Like, it's been a shit show, to say the very least. So, like I said, like Kuz mentioned in the comments, got his start under Eddie Sutton. He's got a degree from there. He's, most his basically family there. This is not speculation. It's fact. They will reach out to Wren Baker if that job comes open. And, like I said earlier, the fact that their AD doesn't even have a contract is pretty scary in and of itself. And the Mike Gundy domino is the one that would, if it falls, I don't know, but like, I know that they're talking about it. I know that. I know that their donors are meeting about it. I 100% know that. Now, could Weiberg stay and pick the next guy and then maybe they go on with Weiberg? Yes, but my thing is if you can get Wren Baker and you don't have an AD tied to a contract, I'm sorry, maybe I'm too close to the situation, but why don't you go after Wren Baker? I mean, I can't think of a reason why you wouldn't do it. He's proven to be elite, and like I told you, one of the things that's kind of put this on the map is what they told me was when West Virginia released that statement last week about being the top funding tier of the Big 12, and Oklahoma State's got Mike Gundy, who won't even speak to donors. This is a fact, an absolute fact. For whatever reason, Cody Stovall, Locked On Oklahoma State, told me himself, Mike Gundy, if a donor wanted to speak to him after the game, he would throat punch him. Like, that's how much he detests this era of football. He's amateurism to his core, right? So, having to speak to a donor about anything is something that he detests. So obviously that's going to look bad on the athletic director, because you kind of have to make him see the light. I don't see Wren Baker as the type of person that, if he were in that scenario with the person, like, look at Rich Rodriguez, fully embraced, everything that is to do with the portal. There wasn't a problem there. People thought there might be a problem. There hasn't been a problem with that. As a matter of fact, Rich Rod realizes we've got to raise more money, as we've seen. So, I think it takes a certain type of AD to deal with a guy like Mike Gundy. And so, it's just a great chance for them to start over. So we'll keep our eyes on it. I'm not saying it's going to happen. That's why it's a question mark, right? Is he returning home? Would he return home? They want Wren Baker. Well, can they get him? I don't know. Is the timing right? These are questions we don't have the answers to. But I figured I'd jump on here and let you guys know ahead of time that things are in the work behind the scenes on the Mike Gundy aspect of all this. Like, that's a very, very real scenario where they may not wait much longer because his vision just doesn't align with his era of college football. That's just what it is. Mike Gundy's not, he's just not a big fan of it for whatever reason. But the main reasons that I have written down here are he's replaced a legend before, he's an elite fundraiser, he's got Cowboy roots, he's got an elite hiring history, and he is a very stable athletic director that can deal with multiple situations on multiple fronts at the same time simultaneously. We've seen him do it. He's literally been put through the ringer at West Virginia for a job like this that comes open that maybe he wants, right? So there's nothing that Oklahoma State can throw at him that is going to be worse than what he's already saw. Replacing Bob Huggins, I would argue, is probably worse than Mike Gundy because we didn't want him to leave when he left, for the most part. Some people did, as to where I think the fan base is kind of out on Gundy at the moment. It's kind of at that Neil Brown place for them where apathy is setting in. So even though they've won a lot of games there and have a lot of reasons to fix it, I don't know. And maybe Wren Baker would be the kind of person that would keep a guy. I have no clue, but I just thought I'd get on here and we would talk about it because this is certainly, it's a scary thing. To lose Wren Baker would be a gut punch for West Virginia for the very simple fact that we just announced this funding tier thing. And it's hard to believe that Wren Baker isn't spearheading that, right? So let's go to break. We'll come back on the other side. We won't stay on here long. It's got a couple other points to make about football as well. Some things I've been kind of racking my brain about as far as solutions to our issues, just to talk about them. We'll be right back. And this episode of Locked On West Virginia going to be brought to you by our friends over at the Game Cap. And look, when it comes to the Game Tap, quick question for you college football fans out there. If you could go back in time and sit front row at your school's biggest rivalry game, what hat would you be wearing? Yeah, I said hat. For me, it would be the backyard brawl game. These aren't just hats. They're the same vintage styles worn back in the 80s and 90s. And guess what? They still go for the same price they did back then. When you use code Locked On, you'll get your own vintage hat for $16.99. Do us a favor and head to thegamecaps.com. That's thegamecaps.com. And use the code Locked On to grab your team's classic bar or retro circle design. Don't forget the code Locked On for an exclusive discount because legends, they wear the game. And it's segment 2. I don't even deserve a do tonight. I'm not going to drink a do tonight either because it's late. So a couple things I've been thinking about. Obviously the football team is in massive struggle mode right now. I know it's just 1 week. We've got a good defense coming in, as good as what we just faced probably in Kansas. A couple of things I've been thinking about that, I want to throw out there because obviously there are no easy fixes here. The offense is where most of the issues lie with this team, and it all starts up front. We all know that. What is the best case scenario for West Virginia? Well, I just saw Xavier Bosley was doubtful or questionable on the depth chart last week. I think that's the number one thing I would address if I'm Rich Rod. Obviously, Xavier Bosley was a freshman All-American in this system a couple years ago, and I do think he's the best tackle on the team. It's just that he's been hurt, and we didn't know that. So can you plug in Bosley, and is he ready? Those are the questions that I have because he could be a huge fix on the right side of the offensive line right now. He's a really good player, guys. I know the numbers. I can't say them publicly, but the numbers were big. Kentucky was offering him a lot of money to go there. So, is he the kind of player that could help? It just sucks that he got hurt. Obviously, Kimo Makaniole, there's a reason they switched him to defensive line at LSU. Can we just admit that now? I love you, James. I know you watch the show, James Makaniole, and I get it. There's more to it than just Kimo. I get that. But individually, he's performed very poorly. And we have to ask ourselves as fans whether or not it's time to replace him or not. And I think that time has come. I I apologize to you. I know that you watch this show, and I don't mean any disrespect. I really don't. And I know that you will probably not watch the show going forward because I'm saying these things, but I have to be honest. And it hurts me to make families mad, just like Mrs. Ash, Clay Ash's mother, has gotten a hold of me a few times over things that I've said. But I have to go forward with what I believe. I don't think that Clay Ash is getting it done, but I could acknowledge that if the offensive line would open a hole for him, he could probably do something. I can definitely handle him being in his role much, much easier than anything else, to be honest. So otherwise, it's just one of those things where Macaiola is not capable, in my opinion. Not capable. I've seen enough. So you guys let me know how you feel about that. But I'm just pointing out that as an abject fact, in my opinion, that he's not good enough and hasn't been good enough for the first 4 games. I think we've seen enough. Everybody else has performed well enough for us to do something. But it's not been great across the board. But I think if you can plug 1 or 2 players in, maybe, so point is, like, obviously I'm a big proponent of, if, you can talk about the problems, but what are the solutions, right? Like we say in recovery, if you come to an NA meeting and talk about your problems, well, this isn't a place where you trauma dump. Come back in a week or 2 weeks or a month and tell us the solution. How did you fix it? Well, my suggestions are probably not as good as what the coaches will come up with, but the Xavier Bosley one I think is a big one. Otherwise, Josh Isosa, is the backup guard. I think he is somebody maybe to look to. Obviously, he went to Oklahoma. As we've learned in the portal, and as Oklahoma State's learning in the portal, that name that Oklahoma State's got Ohio State, they've got LSU, they've got all kinds of players from Power 4 that have transferred in and haven't done crap. So it's not always the name on the jersey that they're transferring from, right? So, unfortunately, I wish it was that easy, but it's not. So Josh Isosa, I think, could possibly be something. I don't know that I would play Nico Marchiol again. This is probably my hottest take, but I don't know how many people are going to disagree with it at this point. At this point, I have seen enough. Last week, I got caught up in the moment in the fourth quarter and overtime, and I thought maybe he turned over a new leaf, and I thought we found some things in the offense we could keep going back to, i.e. the Grayson Barnes thing. That's just not the case. That's just not the case. So, I don't like it as much as anybody else, but it's the truth, right? So, I hate it. I hate talking about it. I hate bringing it up. I don't like to disparage anybody, but I don't think I would play Nico Marchiol another snap this year. I don't know what it would help. I think Max Brown's a better passer. I really, truly do. I always have. I don't know why he's not playing. I have no clue. There's got to be other reasons. But, I mean, based on, the history, he wasn't right about Ty Edwards for a little bit. He wasn't right by Pat White at one point in time. I mean, there are plenty of guys that you look at and say they get in Rich's doghouse for whatever reason. That doesn't mean that they're not good players. So, we'll have to continue to look at that too, man. But yeah, obviously, if Nico starts Saturday, I'll be pretty shocked, honestly, Jerry. I mean, you can say that, but I think we saw too much in the fourth quarter. Sure. Was Kansas playing a different defense? Yes, they were. That's partially why Jalen Henderson had the success he had. But I don't think – go look at the Texas A&M highlights. Jalen Henderson played well as a passer for them. I don't know where that's gone here with this offense, but he was capable for Texas A&M. I don't know what's going on here at West Virginia, but maybe it's a competence thing. I don't know. But as a runner, he can do that. So, or like I said earlier, one other suggestion I'll bring up is maybe you put Rodney Gallagher or Cam Bond in the Wildcat. They were both high school quarterbacks. I don't know how you supplement the run game, y'all. I really don't. We'll go to one more break. We'll put a bow on this one. Thanks for joining in, Locked On West Virginia. And this episode of Locked On West Virginia is going to be brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. When it comes to FanDuel, obviously, there are tons of things you can do, but acknowledge the NFL season is here. FanDuel's making sure you get ready for a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, make you holler. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the season unfolds. Are you ready to play? Because download the FanDuel app today or now by visiting FanDuel.com and getting started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, guys, I appreciate you so much for joining in as we have been on another episode of Locked On West Virginia. Obviously, the question about it is like I said earlier, is Wren Baker returning home? That's the question. I don't know the answer. I would like to know the answer. I guess we'll find it out another time. But certainly there are things that can happen that maybe necessitate that, maybe put it into motion, and we don't want to see those things happen. So keep our eyes on it. I'll keep our eyes on you as we monitor these Mountaineers, guys, the rest of the week. We'll be back tomorrow with more. Until then, make sure you check out Locked On College Football. Make sure you check out what we're doing with Fire TV. Obviously, that's a big deal with Gary Patterson, Drake Toll, Jesse Holly, the whole thing. They're doing a great thing every Thursday. Make sure you check that out too. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Good night. If I can hit the right button. There it is.